Posted BYU syrupbandung. The house I live in was haunted, true story, haunting. This is by far the spookiest experience my family and I have had regarding the paranormal. This is a long story, so I hope you find this interesting enough to read till the end. I am currently living in Australia and this all started when I moved into my current house around 3 years ago. In my culture, we believe that whenever a family moves into a new home, a priest should come to perform various prayers to bless the house. However, when my mom bought the house, we immediately went on holiday for 3 months, so we were unable to perform the rituals. Everything started when we first came back to our house. Just some background, my mom raised me on her own, so it was just the two of us staying in the house at the time. I was still in high school and my mom worked in the city, so we both took the train every morning. My mom always left home earlier than me, so it was my job to lock up every morning. My mom worked late almost every day, so I would get home first and be home alone for at least 5 hours every day. One morning as I left home, I began to feel paranoid that I had not locked the door, so I walked back to check it. The door was locked. Later that day when I came home from school, I walked up my driveway to find that the door was wide open. I freaked out, but because it was brave enough to go inside. Our kitchen is pretty close to the entrance, so I grabbed a knife and searched the entire house. There was no one there. I decided not to tell my mom because she was really stressed with work and I did not want her to freak out. Over the next few days another strange thing started happening. Our garage door would start randomly opening whenever we were home. My mom was kind of scared, but then we thought maybe our neighbor's garage remote functioned at the same frequency or something and it was activating our door too. So, we dismissed it. It had been about 2 months since we were living in our new house and everything seemed to be normal again. Until one day when I was awoken in the middle of the night by my mom. She looked super scared and asked me if I had come to her room to wake her up. I said no, I was half asleep and had no idea what she was rambling on around. She didn't believe me and made me swear that I hadn't. I always play scare pranks on my family, so that was why. I swore I didn't and asked her what was up. My mom is a super light sleeper and so while she was sleeping, she heard someone prop her door open. She looked up and saw the figure of a boy and thought it was me. She asked it what's wrong and blinked. There was nothing there, and her door was still open. She called my name a few times and there was no response, hence why she came to my room. I have to admit, given the stuff happening with the doors, I was kinda scared, but I convinced my mom that she was imagining things and she went back to sleep. Ever since that night, up to this day, my mom still sleeps with her door open and the living room light on. And I do not blame her after what happened next. 2 weeks after this incident occurred, my mom's best friend and her son and daughter, they were both around my age, came over from our homeland, Malaysia, to visit us. I was really excited as I have always been close to them. One thing you should know about my aunt, she's had many experiences growing up with the paranormal, and so she is super scared of ghosts. For this reason me and her kids always used to play pranks on her. One day the 4 of us were playing poker on the dining table while my mom was taking a nap in the living room. Suddenly my mom rushes out of the living room, her eyes were wide open and she looked really scared. She asked her who had woken her up from her nap. The 4 of us were dumbfounded as we had been playing cards the entire time. She then told us that she felt someone tap her shoulder while she was asleep. When she opened her eyes there were 2 feet on the floor. Once again, she blinked, and the feet were gone and there was no one there. My mom was full on freaking out now, especially after what happened the other night. Then my aunt, given how afraid she is of ghosts, started to freak out too. I didn't want her holiday to be ruined, so I managed to convince them that my mom was probably in the middle of a dream, so when she woke up she was probably hallucinating. Yes, I know it sounds stupid but hey, it worked. But then the next day, something else happened. My mom had gone to the shops to get groceries, the kids and I were playing video games in the living room, while their mom was having a shower. Suddenly we hear the bathroom door burst open and out runs my aunt wrapped in her towel. She screamed at us telling us to stop trying to scare us and that it wasn't funny. The 3 of us were super confused and her daughter asked her what had happened. She told us that she knew that we were the ones knocking on the bathroom door even after she told us to stop 3 times. I know it probably seems like she was overreacting, but I cannot emphasize how scared she is of ghosts. I exchanged a concerned look with her kids, and then told her that it genuinely was not us and that we were playing FIFA, best game ever, the entire time. Soon my mom got home and we told her what happened. Let's just say that my aunt started sleeping with her room lights on for the rest of her trip. Soon my aunt and her kids had gone home, and it was back to me and my mom again. We were back to our regular routine. My mum was finally at peace and she had not seen anything for a while, apart from the garage door opening on its own every once and a while. The same however could not be said for me. It seemed that it had come my turn to be tormented. As I mentioned before with my mum at work, I would be home alone for a few hours every day. I began to start hearing things. The strange thing is it would never occur while I was in the living room. Whenever I went to use the toilet or went to sit in my room, I would start hearing things coming from the living room and kitchen. It started out small. Just the sound of some panting, like if you had run a marathon. That kind of panting. But the minute I entered the living room, nothing. There would be no sound at all. It soon started to get worse. I would hear footsteps pacing around outside my room, and spoons and pots falling in the kitchen. But every time I step out into the living room, the noises would stop, and everything would be just as I left it. There was even a time when I thought I heard a kid laughing right outside the door when I was in the toilet. I decided not to tell my mom yet because she seemed to be getting over her experiences and I did not want to scare her again. But one day I felt that I needed to tell her, and we decided that day it was time we contacted our priest to perform the prayers for our house. It was the day my best friend and his parents came over for dinner. It all started as an innocent dinner. My best friend and his family were Malaysian too and we were having a great time talking about home while having a signature Malaysia meal. My friend's dad was telling us a story when all of a sudden, his face just froze, and his eyes widened. He honestly looked like he was having a stroke. His face contorted into a frown and he just stared down at the table. My mum and I shared a worrying look, but my friend and his mum just continued eating like nothing was happening. Suddenly his dad seemed to return to us, and he continues telling the story as if nothing happened. But he could see that my mum and I looked worried. Suddenly his wife tapped his shoulder and said, "Just tell them." He frowned at his wife and just kept eating. There was an awkward silence for a few minutes, and then he finally decided to address the elephant in the room. He apologized for scaring us and assured us that there was no need to worry. He then went on to tell us about his life. Since he was a child, he had been very religious and from a young age he felt a very close connection to God. He regularly meditated and was very spiritual. He was so spiritual that when he was in his mid-20s, he had awoken a gift. He was able to see dead people. I kid you not, when he said this, I immediately looked at my friend waiting for him to start laughing at some prank. But my friend's face was dead serious, and he continued looking at his dad as he told his story. He told us that he could see them everywhere, when he was walking his dog on the street, when he is sitting in the park, in people's houses, and even sometimes sitting on people who had been possessed. He said the spirits were drawn to him because they knew he could see them, and they would stalk him, begging him to help them reach the afterlife. He said there was simply nothing he could do, because these people had died before their time and that they would simply have to wait on Earth until it was their time. Back home, he was regularly contacted by people having paranormal experiences to perform a cleansing to drive evil spirits away. He told us about some of those experiences, but I do not feel like it is my place to share them here. He then asked us something that gave me chills. Have you guys performed prayers for your house yet? A week later we arranged for a priest from our local temple to cleanse and bless our home. I promise you that ever since that day, nothing strange has ever happened in our house, even the garage door has stopped opening on its own. I am not a particularly religious person, but I have learned my lesson. I will never move into a new house without performing the rituals that my culture demand.